G'day guys and welcome, my name's Michael and I am the Deadaussiegamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Today's Character Corner, we're going to be taking a deep and insightful look at how it was I came to create and embody the character of Jaggerjaw, my Shah Khan Ranger from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh series, currently airing on twitch.tv/D&D. Now, first of all, if you've not heard of the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, it is a fantastic book that has compiled a whole bunch of old school adventures set in the pirate town of Saltmarsh. These adventures have been gathered up together and upgraded to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and added in with a whole bunch of really cool and awesome stuff for your pirate adventure, ranging from naval combat to a menagerie of marine monstrosities, and of course the different roles that one can be on a ship. This and many, many more are great reasons to pick up that book if you have not done so already. This being said, however, this is not a review of the book or anything like that. We're going to be talking about my character. Now, I'm a big advocate of having characters built, sort of with a solid foundation, and I go through my very own process when making them. So I thought, with the Ghosts of Saltmarsh currently being aired and with a lot of people asking me about the very simple origin of the Shah Khan race, this would be a great time to talk about Jaggerjaw and where he came from. So, let's talk shop. Where did Jaggerjaw come from? So Jaggerjaw actually, for me, came from a place where I wanted to make something that was going to be iconically Australian. When approached about the Ghost of Saltmarsh adventure, Guy from How to Be a Great GM approached me and said, "Hey Mike, look, we're going to be doing an international Dungeons and Dragons game on the D&D Twitch channel. And we've got someone from Germany, we've got someone from Sweden, from the UK, South Africa, and we want to get you as the Australian player." I was obviously through the moon. I was so happy that I got invited. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? If I'm being there as a iconic Australian, then I want to play something that is iconically Australian as well. So it boiled down to two choices for me, and that it's always going to be these two choices when people say, "Hey, you want to play an Australian character?" The first, of course, is the Shah Khan, the great white shark, because, as Australians, we're very proud of sharks. We're very proud of most of our wildlife, in fact. And of course, the second thing that I always view as iconically Australian is crocodiles. So whether or not it was going to be a ranger with a crocodile or, an actual full-blown lizard folk with a pronounced snout, these were my options that I wanted to present to Guy. He and I both agreed the shark was just a perfect fit for this game. It was the perfect kind of thing. We actually played RPGs such as the Freeport Adventures, which actually does go into like were sharks and things like that. So we wanted to do something that wasn't as powerful and as chunky as a were shark, and do something a little bit more like its own unique race, similar to the lizard folk or tieflings or anything like that. So the Shah Khan were born. From here, we basically just took the idea, where do we want to evolve the race, what culture, and seeing as it was supposed to be inherently Australian, that's what we drew on. We drew on actually a mix of different things from the Oceanic region. Not just Australia, but also New Zealand, Tonga, Samoa. A lot of their cultural elements have sort of been incorporated to inspire the Shah Khan's traditional behaviors and culture. For example, the warrior race of the New Zealand Maori was very much a heavy inspiration to the aggressive side of the Shah Khan. While I would never be so callous as to do something like the haka publicly, the language is very much, it carries the same nuances as Maori. For me, it was a lot of, sort of rounded numbers. Rounded letters and very strong, very gruff sounds. So, Patulna Hanatini Wahala Nakan. This is obviously not Maori, but like those just aggressive, like almost like you're thrusting your words at people. Was just part of building that aggression for the Shah Khan and building up that sort of nature for them. Things like the spiritualist side and the superstitious nature of folklore from the indigenous Australians also made it into the Shah Khan in the form of their folklores and their stories. As a tribal coastal race, they share tales from family members to family members. So all of them, no matter how old, how young, how separated from their family they may be, the Shakan are very superstitious by nature, which plays into a lot of the relationships we'll talk about a bit later. So this is what originated the Shah Khan and originated where Jaggerjaw came from. But I couldn't simply just say, okay, cool, I'm done. I make a barbarian who is a shark and I go hit things. For me, that's way too simple. It's way too easy and boring. So I needed to look at what to make unique. What can I do to make this person really stand out? And for me, apart from the Australian shark thing, I wanted to go for the whole misunderstood shark thing. So, for those of you who enjoy Shark Week and the like, you know that there is a lot of media around that villainizes sharks. Sharks are dangerous, mindless killing machines with soulless black eyes that only swim and eat and blah, 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 blah. When, in fact, a lot of people who work with sharks or who study sharks will tell you that they are as complex a creature as any other and grossly misunderstood. I wanted to really embody that with Jaggerjaw. The one thing I really wanted to do is I wanted him to appear very aggressive, very strong, very brutish. But in fact, he doesn't thrive off breaking things apart and destroying things like a barbarian would. In fact, he's all about survival. He's all about life. He's all about building things and creating things. He's got a gentle soul behind his very thick skin. And that was where I wanted to really start with Jaggerjaw as a character. At this point in time, once we, sort of decided, what race we wanted to go with for everyone, we started discussing with the other players who wanted to be in what role for the ship. Very quickly, Jenny offered to take on the role of captain with Victor Salt, and Janet took on Lahuna as the first mate. From there, it was down to Myri, Mark, and myself as to who wanted to do what exactly. We kind of went back and forth a few times here and then. What we ended up settling with was Mark taking on the role of the quartermaster or the navigator, the Myri taking the role of the ship's surgeon, and of course the Shah Khan, myself taking the role of the bosun. So, the whole idea of repairing the ship, fixing the ship, and keeping it running definitely suited exactly what I wanted to do. So now I had the Shah Khan, I had the idea of what I wanted to build. Next, I needed to pick a class. When we pick classes, I feel like more often than not, people go for like what we do in a team. We need a healer, we need a warrior, we need a rogue, we need a wizard. What I tend to do more than anything else is I wait to see what my other players will go with. I find that the more experienced a player is, the more you'll be able to achieve with less, if that makes sense. So if, for example, someone plays a rogue, that's fantastic. They're playing in that role and they're doing what they feel is their strength. I will play something that will help the rogue that isn't necessarily a rogue. That's my process. So we ended up with a fighter-based character. We ended up with a paladin. We ended up with a druid. We ended up with a wizard. So I thought to myself, well, between all of this, having another healer, having a cleric isn't a bad idea. But I didn't want to take Jaggerjaw down a religious path. So I thought, if I wasn't going down the religious path, I wanted to kind of go religious adjacent. I wanted that superstitiousness to really come out. So I looked at the ranger. Now, rangers for me have always had a very special place because in my head, I always imagine rangers as being very cynical characters. People who have survived harsh terrains, horrible environments. They've seen monsters and they're wary of things, which is what keeps them alert and alive. So it suited the idea of Jaggerjaw. He comes around, he keeps the ship safe because he knows what happens when things fail. It also plays into the whole idea of the nature lore and the knowledges that he picks up from, the folklore and the words of mouth. And all of that tied together it just made sense for the ranger as a class. Now we've only just started, so we don't really have any specialities at this point. But I did intend to bring Jaggerjaw towards the monster hunter type of archetype for the ranger. Reason being is I want Jaggerjaw to be the kind of person to be reliable in fights against sea monsters. Not that I imagine Victor wouldn't have his hands full running a ship. Jaggerjaw would just be quite useful being that kind of underwater combat character. You know, being able to be that versatile, the person who can help, say, the merfolk first mate engage in those oceanic battles. So yeah, the Monster Hunter was where I went with that. All right, so I designed the race, which I'll put a link in the description below. I came up with the culture, which I now have, and I've built that solid foundation upon. I came up with my quest and my own personal goal, which was, of course, to convey the whole misunderstanding between Shah Khan being not just mindless brutes, but also being very creative and being very gentle souls. Now I needed to look at a way to inherently attach my character to the crew. Why is my shark running around with a group of people on a boat? Well, Jaggerjaw for me was pieced together a lot during Game 0. Guy actually ran us through what was effectively a half an hour scenario. We did some ship combat and we got to, sort of interact with each other. It was a lot of fun, but I learnt a lot about how my character would interact and engage with everyone at the group. So starting with, of course, the captain. Some of it was that Guy had presented us each with like a little challenge, something we had to overcome. My challenge in particular was that some barrels from the food supply had gone missing, and I had to figure out what was what. Now my character did his best to kind of solve that scenario, but approached the captain about it, and there was some tension there, which I wasn't expecting. Victor Salt as a character is a very aggressive character. Jen had basically written this backstory for the character that they're playing as this kind of psychotic, thuggish character who has a dark past. They'd done some terrible things in their history, etc., etc., etc. So at the time that we were playing, that was set to, like 10. It was basically set to, this is the character so that everyone knows. Now, this isn't a bad comment or anything like that, but when two aggressive opposing forces hit each other, you can often have collisions and kind of start that kind of abrasive gameplay. And I wanted to avoid that. Generally speaking, it's a bad idea, especially if you are Twitch streaming. So if you're watching this and you are a streamer, try not to headbutt with players, right? So I looked at it in the viewpoint of this. Victor Salt is a tough guy. He's supposed to have this history of being this absolute badass. And I'm a big shark who eats people and has no qualms about doing so. What's going to happen when we start trying to intimidate each other? So I took back on Jagsy and said that, well, Jaggerjaw, he respects the captain, but he does not engage or interact with the captain that often. The reason being is that, for the most part, I think it's just going to end up in conflict. So instead, I spoke with Jen, and we decided that Jaggerjaw was going to be like a secret confidant for the captain. Unlike Lahuna, who is very gentle, very kind, very spiritual, Jaggerjaw is chaotic evil. Absolutely and utterly depraved. Not because he's a lunatic or anything like that. He is just driven by his incredible appetite. And just has no moral quandaries with what or who he eats. That's what makes him evil. So it would be scenarios like when the captain's having dark days, to find Jaggerjaw, who might happen to be eating and sitting quietly by himself, and discussing some of those feelings, some of those darker urges and darker thoughts, because Jaggerjaw generally will not judge the captain for it. Jaggerjaw doesn't see any problem with what the captain's doing. So he is good as a soundboard in that regard. And I think that helped build a positive relationship between the two. Though, since the start of the game, I think there's a lot of kind of understanding of what Jaggerjaw is capable of coming from the captain as well. So, I think at the moment I've been kind of put in as a kind of point guard for the group, so I'm pretty happy about that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. The first mate. Building a relationship with the first mate was very interesting, and let me tell you why. As we were building characters and the like, I approached Janet and Mark in particular about how they wanted to play. Both of them said that they wanted to play really funny characters, things that are going to make people laugh and have a great time. And I normally play that character. So it was at this time that I said, Jaggerjaw is not going to be an idiot. He's not going to be a big, dumb, goofy dude who's going to make people laugh. As much as I'd like that, instead, I wanted to make him be the straight person in the comedy routine. For those of you who don't know what that means, in some forms of stand-up comedy, you have what is called a comic foil and a comic straight person. The foil will do something clumsy or something reckless or something dumb, and the straight person will react to it, often in a very exaggerated way. Let me give you an example. In the first episode of The Ghost of Saltmarsh, Jaggerjaw was in the bilge eating rats. Nothing special. Flick, Mark's character, grabbed hold of his octopus familiar and threw it at the shark's head. Now, if I were to quote-unquote roleplay in character and have my very stern, very aggressive shark person get hit in the face with an octopus, well, that would be one less octopus that we would need to deal with. But that's not amusing, that's not funny, that's not entertaining. So Jaggerjaw reacts. The octopus sticks to his face, and I spend half my time trying to pry it off his head. And then once I pry it off his head, Flick goes running off into the top of the ship to see what commotion's going on. And I basically just huck this thing like a baseball towards Flick. Now, I haven't personally done something funny. Like, Jaggerjaw has not instigated the humor. But by his reaction, that's where the funny stuff lie. So, it was at this point when dealing with how to build a relationship with Lahuna and Flick that I decided I wanted to be that comedy straight man. I wanted to be that person who reacted to the things they did. And that's been working really well. I've been quite enjoying that. Jaggerjaw's relationship with the first mate has also been quite good, as he, especially in the last few episodes, as of quote-unquote episode 4, I believe, 4 or 5, he and the first mate have begun working together as a team, which has been fantastic. I love working as a team. Teamwork makes the dream work. Last but not least, Indigo. Indigo was a very interesting character because when we spoke about how our characters joined the crew, which I'm not going to spoil for anyone yet, how it was we joined the crew and how a group of ragtag people ended up with the captain, Indigo had a very interesting method of how she ended up aboard the Second Chance. And it gave me the opportunity to explore Jaggerjaw's superstitious side. In Shah Khan culture, I basically twisted it around and said, well, sea elves are good luck. You do not kick a sea elf off your ship. That's just tons and tons of bad luck. So if anything ever were to happen, or if Indigo was to be kind of cast out, Jaggerjaw is very quick to come to her defense. This started a train of thoughts, I guess, a train of events, which has started to sort of blossom into what appears as a romance. But I'll tell you this right now. As of today, as of this, the current episode, which, is, I think, episode 5 or 6, there is no kind of love, romance kind of thing. There is definitely a love. There is definitely a kindness that Jaggerjaw feels towards Indigo, but nothing just yet. The reason being is that Shakan are very honor bound, and for them, they only really hang out with other Shakan. If they are on their own, it's usually because they've been cast out or they're banished, and the idea of being in a relationship with a non-Shakan even further isolates you. So Jaggerjaw's at present just not clicking onto any kind of romantic ideals yet, but he does care deeply for Indigo at present. So yeah, there you So now I've told you how I built my own personal quest and my own personal goals. This is how I now then established my relationship with my group, because by doing this, it means that I always have a reason to back up my group. Even as a chaotic evil character, I don't need to go berserk randomly and then counterman my group. No, I would never act against the Indigo because it's bad luck. I would maybe chase Flick around and try to eat him, but only in jest because, again, I'm playing that kind of straight person role. I have a deep respect for Lahuna because me and Lahuna have a backstory where we've worked together and where we rely on each other in a military kind of way almost. And of course, me and the captain have a somewhat a strange relationship. So with that, I've created a sense of loyalty between my chaotic evil character and the rest of the group. Which leaves the last little peg: how to connect myself to the narrative. Now, I didn't know too much about the narrative. I read about the Saltmarsh stuff from what Guy had given us. And to be honest, I didn't feel like I needed anything. I told Guy about just how my character would have come to being the shipwright, where I would have acquired that knowledge to repair ships and do stuff if I was indeed an aquatic character. And so we came up with the idea that my character was in fact raised in Saltmarsh by a carpenter. In fact, the lead of the Carpenter Guild, rather crotchety old gnomish woman who has been a lot of fun and has actually made an appearance in the game so far. I'm kind of like an adopted son, and sort of I do things for her for free because she's basically my adopted mother. And Jaggerjaw is very much in love with his. I love my mama. Loves his nan, calls her nan. Loves my nan. So yeah, that is what I used to create the backstory of Jaggerjaw. Now, there are a lot of things that we tinkered with to kind of get the style right. We kept thinking about what kind of weapon he would use. Does he use a longbow because he's a ranger, or does he use a short sword or two short swords? Eventually, I spoke to Guy, and we agreed that he should have something a bit unconventional. So we gave him an anchor, just a big, heavy weight that he can whack people with. And the anchor is more of a tool than an actual weapon. He carries it around for good luck, because it actually was part of the first ship he'd ever built, which sadly sank. It was the only bit that they managed to recover. And he also does use it as a makeshift weapon, in the sense that sometimes he will just snag it to someone trying to swim and watch them sink to their death. But, it's never happened yet. If it happens, then that'd be kind of cool, but we'll see. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is how we created Jagsy. When it came to portraying Jagsy, there were a couple of things that I wanted to do. Obviously, firstly, I wanted to have a costume of some kind. Hence why I've got my lovely little shark tooth necklace. Something small, because, I don't want to paint myself blue. I could look like that. I don't want to. The second thing I did was I needed to find the right voice for him. I played along with a bunch of different voices, including a deep kind of rolling voice that seems to come over the teeth and lips. But I thought that'd be way too hard to do for a couple of hours. The second voice was the typical deep Australian. G'day, my name's Bruce. You'll find me on the docks, big burly muscles in hand. Don't worry about it, I've got you covered. And I realized that that while doing that, it kind of made him seem very dull and very lazy. Eventually, I ended up with the sounding voice that I've got now. I'm pretty happy with this one because it sounds like I'm at least a little bit active. Sounds like I at least have a little bit of aggression, and I always speak as though I'm really cross at something, even if what I'm saying is completely mundane. These little things for the voice are made super easy because I'm Australian and I can speak in that dialect. My recommendation, if you're ever doing voices, or if you want to try voices for your characters, stick with something that you know and then try variations before expanding outwards and upwards into the other more wonderful accents. Yeah, so pretty much at this point, I'd well-rounded the character, and that was when we got the artwork for the characters, and I was absolutely blown away. We got to submit a whole bunch of stuff to like describe what they look like and what they felt like. Actually, I've got mine here. I'll read it out. Like it was actually I was pretty happy with it. Let's see. Here we go. Bios. Here we go. All right. So for Jaggerjaw, I mean, for me, I had a simple requirement. I just wanted him to be a shark person. So Jaggerjaw, or Jagsy, a tall, dense, muscular humanoid great white shark. He is shirtless, wears an open black sleeve leather vest. On the back of the vest is open, revealing a long, prominent dorsal fin. Brown leather belt with a gold buckle and several tools for carpentry hanging off his belt. Dark blue pants, heavy set with copper buckles. Some light scarring across chest, arms, and nose. Posed resting with an anchor over his shoulder. So yeah, as you can see there, most of that was pretty much taken into account. We kind of didn't do the blue pants, but you can see there's the blue sash around his chest. You can see like the tool chest next to him. And let me just move him a little bit here. Oh, don't make him disappear. There you go. And you can see the anchor right there as well. So there you go. So the guy who did this was Tony, and again, I'll try and get his link in the description below. He is an absolutely stellar artist, and I think he absolutely nailed Jaggerjaw. What I want to show you guys now as well, just while I remember it, is I will show you guys the original artwork that I had, that I used as inspiration for Jaggerjaw originally. Now, this artwork is, I don't know where it came from, so I can't really cite it. But if you do know where it comes from, leave a comment. Let me know, because I am very curious as well. I would very much love to know where it came from. So let me just push Jaggerjaw back over there, and here we go. There. So this individual here was the original thing that I sent the artist, and I said, hey, look, this is kind of the inspiration for my character. This is what I would love for you to be able to create and draw. And you know what? Honestly, I like my dude better. I mean, not to say this isn't super cool. This is like freaking awesome, but special place in my heart for good old Jagsy. So that's all we have for today's video. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope, of course, that you are enjoying the Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Do check out the links below, because I will have the links to the shows. I'll have a link to, obviously, all the actors and stuff like that that are currently playing in the show, and, of course, the artist who had done the amazing artwork for Jaggerjaw. If you got any questions or anything you'd like me to clarify, leave a comment below. Let us know, and I'd be more than happy to share my thoughts. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on Jaggerjaw. If you've watched the series and are a fan, let me know. Tell me if there's things that you'd like to see me do on the show. I know we've already coined the term Jagsit, which is when Jagsy has to repair something quite quickly. But yeah, I love stuff like that. I love stuff like that. So feel free to be creative. And of course, till next time, guys, as always, game hard or die trying. See you guys.